Welcome back to Hey Chaplain. My name is Jared Altick, and I'm a chaplain with the police department. 2 years ago, we talked with Doug Monda, and today I have for you a special abbreviated and condensed version of that interview with him. The original is one of my longest episodes, clocking in at about 55 minutes, so this is maybe about a third of the original content. But I wanted to give you a little reminder of how good Doug was in that interview, and you can always go back and listen to the original in its entirety. It's episode 022, episode 22. To bring you up to speed, Doug Monda was a professional athlete turned high-speed, low-drag SWAT cop in a Florida city with a very high rate of violent crime. His identity was wrapped up in being a very physically active athlete and operator, until that was all suddenly taken away by a serious injury. This led to depression, post-traumatic stress, and finally, 2 attempts to take his own life. This conversation gets right at the heart of mental health, depression, and suicide, so listener discretion is advised. Here's Doug Monda.
So the truck's coming towards me. I go, man, and then everything, and any cop who's ever been in this situation, a shooting, anything like that, life slows down to slow-mo. And it's coming at me, and and finally I'm like, wow, man, this guy is going to try to run me over. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to shoot him. And, it's not my first rodeo, and the truck's coming at me, and I'm pointing my gun, and you think about, I don't miss, I'm a precision shooter, but I can't see the guy driving the truck, but I can see the steering wheel. The reason I couldn't see is the sun was glaring. I'm in Florida.
Right.
So, it's, as I always say, it's hotter than 3 hills in Florida with that sun, right? And so the sun is in the window, but I see the steering wheel. So I go, okay, man, just shoot the steering wheel. You're going to catch him in the chest, or raise up a couple inches from the steering wheel and pop him in the head.
Right.
And just as I about to do that, a little head pops up behind the steering wheel. It was an 11-year-old kid.
Oh my.
And when his head popped up, I saw my oldest son. Like all of a sudden, I remember it vividly. Obviously, it changed the course of my life.
Right.
And I just froze and went, oh my God, it's a little kid. And the little kid plowed into my car, which plowed me into an oak tree. And that was the catalyst. Suffered a severe back injury. Didn't know it at the time. Had some bone fragment in my spinal cord. I had ruptured disc, and I also suffered a severe brain injury. And that is the injury that forever changed my life to this day. I'm still impacted by it.
Now, from there, you're going to have time off because you're injured, and that often really affects an officer to be out of his routine and to be away from his coworkers and that kind of thing. And like in a lot of cases, depression became part of your story too. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, it's exactly how it went. I was never prepared to sit on a couch. Never sit on couch. Wasn't a TV watcher. Wasn't a video game player. I was moving at a high rate of speed. And so you're right. I got injured. I had to go home for the first time. And, I'm the type of guy that I didn't ever take lunch. Didn't really have to most times in my career, but I wasn't a lunch taker. I didn't call out sick. I went to work when I was sick. I'd want to stay home when I felt good so I could go surfing. So I was a worker, right? And I went home and I got put on a couch. Could barely move, could barely function. And what took place, as far as I know, now I'm not PhD kind of guy or anything like that. I can only go by my life's experience, but I sat on that couch, and what took place was every horrible thing that I had encountered in my career, all the trauma, all the dead things, all the shootings, all the all the stuff, I finally, for the first time, had time to think about all that. Now, you think about it, of course,
Sure.
But I had plenty of time to think about it. And so obviously that was making the depression worse. And then, how did I deal with going, okay, I'm never going to be a world champion. I'm never going to be an athlete. They're telling me I'm never going to run. I can barely, at this point, Jared, I can't even wipe my own butt when I go to the bathroom. That's how bad it was.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there for the first time, requiring help from people. I had recently gotten divorced after 17 years, like every other cop, right? The marriage went because I was so busy at work doing my job. I was never home doing my job.
Yeah.
And it finally took a toll on me. So all these things, man, just instantly started piling up on me. And I wasn't, I wasn't prepared for that. I wasn't taught that in the police academy. I was never taught that in work. Even with a background in spec ops, that's not what we talk about. We talk about taking a bullet and moving forward, and that hut mentality. Yeah. And depression and PTSD and all those things, they were just never in my vocabulary until that moment. But I wasn't aware and I wasn't educated in. So I didn't know better to reach out. I didn't know better to call anybody. All my guys are trained assassins. So, they're just going to be like, all right, man, let's go out drinking and let's go do this or whatever chronic cockamamie idea that one could come up with. And that was the start of the downfall right there. Well, in this case, the physical pain caused the mental pain. And there's, at that point in my life, you couldn't medicate that pain. I'm not a pill eater and I'm, any of that type of stuff. I'm terrified of drugs and things like that. But they couldn't medicate the pain that I was going through physically and mentally.
Right.
And I tell everybody when I'm telling the story on stage, I'm like, listen, man, I go, everybody remembers September 11th, where these guys were jumping out of windows. And it wasn't because the building was getting ready to collapse. It was because the amount of pain they were enduring from the heat and the fire and stuff. Yeah. And I go, that's the level of pain that I had been through. Now I've got holes punched through me. You can't even imagine. Stabbings, broken bones. I've had 22 I'm no stranger to pain. Yeah. And, when you run full speed for 140 miles, trust me when I tell you, I know pain. Yeah. This is a pain that is undescribable.
Yeah. And there is a type of pain that it's not that you're wanting to jump to your death. It's that you're wanting to get away from that pain.
Yeah, absolutely. When I have conversations with people and they go, man, I'll tell you, my back was in such bad shape. I just wanted to shoot myself. They don't realize what they're saying.
Yeah. There's an actual pain that could actually lead to that. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It's that kind of pain, man. And that was what I had never experienced before in my life. So to make a super long story, I had been dealing with work and I'd been dealing with these other things and, in this whole process. And I just was like, the only way I'm ever going to get away from this pain is I've got to leave. And I meant it. And I didn't ever tell nobody. I wasn't the type of guy. I'm still not the type of guy that calls people and complains and, bows me. And I just made up my mind. And I had a lot of resistance at the time. I had a crappy girlfriend at the time. My work was giving me a hard time. They don't mean it, but they're, hey, when you coming back to work, we're posting overtime. And I'm like, dude, I'm in a wheelchair, man.
Right,
like, what don't you get? Right. That type of stuff. And then, so anyway, they forced me to go get some help. They call it a Baker Act here in Florida. So, they knew I was not doing bad. This girl that I was dating had called a police chief friend and said, hey, I think he's going to kill himself. Well, next thing you know, the cops are at my house and they're questioning me. And I got offended. I got insulted. I'm a leader of a SWAT team at the time. And, I just was very unstable. It was the best thing that ever happened to me is them carting me off, but they did. And so I'm also the type of guy that's like, if I set my mind to do something, you're not stopping me.
Right.
And I got a crappy attitude like most guys like me. And I'm like, oh, you're going to tell me I can't do something. So when they brought me back to my house that day, And I had already known that when I was gone that day, they went into my house and they took all my weapons. They took my police stuff. My girlfriend at the time said, yeah, come in his house and take all his stuff. And so I was super upset about that. I felt violated.
Sure. Yeah.
Betrayed and all those things. And so when I got home, my Porsche was in the driveway, and in Porsche, I had a particular Porsche that had hidden compartments. The door handles on most Porsches, not that it's a big deal, but I always tell the cops this, so if they ever pull a Porsche over, they know that Porsche door handles are hidden compartments. But I had my gun in there. Nobody knew it. And so my neighbors and a couple of my SWAT guys and my girlfriend, they were in my front yard because they knew, I told them when I get home, I'm whooping everybody's butt. And so they were expecting that guy.
Right.
And so I came home, I walked up, walked right up to my car, and they're all watching me. I pulled the gun out. I walked to about the front door area of my house, put the gun to my head, pulled the trigger, and nothing happened. As far as they know, because there was an issue. The gun and the bullet was put into evidence. There was actually even a gag order. It was claimed to be a failed bullet.
So what did you experience when it happened? I mean, just a misfire?
Yeah, it was crazy because one of my guys tackled me. And so it became kind of like one of those Jerry Springer moments, so to speak, for lack of better terms. And they took it from me because shortly after that, I went away.
Okay.
But it was weird to be precise about it. One of my guys, he asked me what I thought, just like you did afterwards. And I said, I don't know why, but for whatever reason, I said, you remember that scene in Ghost where where the dude dies and the black things come from out of the ground? Do you remember that?
Right. Oh, yeah.
That I would, and he said, because he was there, he goes, I remember you doing that. And I was staring down at the ground. I actually was like, wow, that movie was right. I didn't even feel it. And lo and behold, I was still alive. So it was weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're kind of out of your mind at the time. Those type of things happen. But that's basically what I was thinking in my sick head at the time.
Wow.
So, so that's how number one went down. And that's actually was the beginning of the next nightmare.
Well, let me stop you here and ask you, if someone's listening to this right now and they're kind of identifying with the not just the pain or despair, but just they feel like the only good solution is to get out. And if they're going to finally fix something, it's going to be getting out of this life. What should they do right now?
I would say the absolute best thing that anybody could do in that predicament is to take 1 second of your time and think about who could I call or who could I talk to, who I trust enough and who I believe in enough that could give me the answer that I'm looking for. That's a very difficult thing to do in a moment like that. I can say that's what you should do. That's not obviously what I did, nor did I have the education in that at the time. And that's just a whole nother topic of why we need to highly educate our law enforcement, our first responders, and families about this matter so that it can become a common knowledge of when you get into this spot. That is one of the things you can do is call somebody who's been there and done that, so to speak, and go, hey, here's where I'm at. Can you give me some advice? And I meet 1-year cops and I meet 30-year cops who have the same issue. And it doesn't matter who you are or what kind of training you are, man. If it hits you, it's like anybody who wakes up with cancer. How it was explained to me by a doctor. You don't ask for it. You just wake up one day with it.
Yeah.
And if you woke up with cancer, what would you do? You'd run to the doctor. You'd start treatments and therapies and all this type of stuff, and everybody would come to your corner and help you. That's what we do, right?
Right.
But when we get this type of disease or injury, we just blow it off. And what was explained to me is this disease is no different than cancer because it can clearly kill you.
I have various resources for you listed in the show notes of this episode. If you need to talk to somebody, call 988 right now. Pause the episode, call 988, or call Copline. Again, the information is in the episode description. It's interesting hearing an excerpt from 2 years ago for several reasons. First, I'm going to get to see Doug this summer and help his foundation while we're at an event together. But second, I can really hear the difference in the equipment and technology that I was using 2 years ago versus now, even after I've cleaned it up a bit. All of those listeners who faithfully helped me behind the scenes deserve a big thank you for providing better tools and better resources to improve the show. You guys make the show a lot more fun to produce, and it keeps getting better year after year. Thank you so much. The views expressed here are the personal views of the host and our guests and do not necessarily represent the views of any law enforcement agency or its components. If you like this episode or the original episode from the archives, please share it with a cop or someone who loves a cop. Thank you for listening to Hey Chaplain, and as always, pray for peace in our city.